Good evening. Thank you guys for joining us on this Thursday. By show of hands, how many of you have been to senior parent night before? All right, a couple repeats. I am Emily Case. I am one of the school counselors here. Tonight I'll be presenting with Elizabeth Mays. We have a pretty in-depth presentation to go over kind of things that are happening now and things that are coming soon. So feel free to take some notes and enjoy it. I'm happy to see some students here as well. That's awesome. You're going to be hearing this information again next week, so excellent. If you don't know your student's counselor, here's a list of the breakdown alpha. It's also on our website as well. Hopefully you know. So we're going to take a look at a couple things. What's happening now and what are the next steps? So happening now. Senior folder. Next Thursday and Friday in English classes, we are going into senior classes, and we are going to give them an overview of the college application process and things that they can be doing to prepare. In that, they are going to get a folder. So next Thursday or Friday, you can ask your student when they get home, can I see your folder? Because it's going to have a lot of papers in it, okay? For starters, they'll have a senior transcript. So it'll be grades of everything that they've had over the last 3 years, the courses that they're currently enrolled in, along with their credits, their GPA. It'll have a lot of information that they'll need as they fill out applications. Along with that will be a senior contract, and I'll get into that in a second. They'll also have a college checklist, and we're going to go over all these documents tonight. There'll be a common application completion guideline, essay prompts, and recommendation guide. So a lot of important things in that folder that'll come home. One of the things I mentioned is the senior contract. So they'll get a document that looks similar to this screenshot here. And it will be specific to your student about how many credits they have earned so far, what specific credits they need for graduation to meet those requirements, outlining our graduation requirements. They will sign, they'll read it, they'll sign it during class, we'll collect them back, and then a copy will get mailed home. Anything as far as schedule changes at this point have been completed. So really what's on your student's schedule should be accurate. They should be similar to exactly what will be on their transcript. So any questions, be sure to contact your counselor. Preparing to apply. So, certainly, I'm sure you've been out and about, either virtually or in person, trying to research colleges for your students. Hopefully this past summer and going to the fall, you are starting to compile a list of schools. So as we start to see students applying for colleges, well, the question is always, well, how many? How many colleges should I be applying to? And the question, there's no hard number. But generally speaking, we're telling students to apply to 2 or 3 reach schools. So meaning you might be a little bit below the GPA ranges or the SAT scores. 2 or 3 target schools, so you're kind of right in the neighborhood of what they're looking at. And then 2 or 3 safety schools. Safety can mean academically safety, or it could mean financially safety, or both. So again, somewhere between 6 and 8 schools is typically what students are applying. On Naviance, your students have seen the scattergram, which is that graph, to outline, where they might fall. That data goes back to all the way to 2006, and it's based on student reporting. So it's a loose guideline. It's not necessarily the be-all, end-all, but it gives you information specific to East Lyme High School, rather than some of the websites that is national data. And what I want to hone in on is students should really only apply to schools that they will actually attend. We have some students who are like, I want to apply to this school just to see if I can get in. And while that might be tempting, the school that they're applying to, if they see applications, from 13 East Lyme High School students, they're not going to accept all 13 students from that high school, right? So in some sense, they could be taking away another possibility of a seat at another school if they're just trying to apply kind of on a whim. So you really want to make sure it's a school that they truly, or you guys as a family have really talked about that they would actually attend. A part of that preparing right now is standardized test scores, standardized tests. So the ACT and the SAT, these are the most recent, and these dates came directly from the website. But if your student, is taking their standardized test again, if they want to take it this fall, these are the upcoming deadlines. Again, right on their website, but just a quick reference if you feel like you need it. Going back to that, and we'll touch upon that more, but some colleges are test optional, meaning they won't require SAT or ACT scores. So that will be dependent on each college. So you may need that information. You may not. So what I want to talk about next is not just the overall process, but the East Lyme High School college application process and how we try to navigate that. What you're doing at home and joining that with our process here. So for those of you who are unaware, the general college application portfolio consists of these specific items. So it's the application itself, so with your name, your demographic, all of that information. Your essay is included in there. Then, along with that, is your transcript, meaning all the grades and GPA that you've had over the course of the last 4 years. Part of that college application portfolio is a school profile, which I'll get into that more. A secondary school report, which is something the counselors submit. Letters of recommendation, which we'll talk a little bit about that more. And standardized tests. So these are the components of the college application. There's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of items that students are responsible for, some that our school is responsible for, some that the teachers. So the part of tonight is outlining exactly who needs to be doing what and what timelines that should be working on. But looking at applications, I have a lot of kids who are coming in to my office saying, I'm not too late, right? It sounds like other people are starting their application. Am I behind? You're not behind yet, okay? Every timeline, looks different for each student and each family. And there's a lot of different application types. So the two that I want to highlight right now, because you might see these buzzwords as your students are applying, are early action and early decision. Now, why they decided to pick names that are so similar is beyond me, because they are two very, very different application types. So early action is that I would say the majority of what our students end up doing is applying early. So it's an early application deadline, meaning a November 1st, November 15th, December 1st deadline, heavy application season in the fall. It is not a binding decision, meaning you can apply. What students like about this is they find out if they get in earlier, right? So they apply early so they can find out earlier. And sometimes just knowing that, having that timeline settled is enough for students. On the flip side of that, you need to be pretty organized out of the gate to be making those deadlines, okay? Early decision, that is a binding application process. So meaning you are applying to a college that you feel really strongly about, that regardless of, not necessarily the financial piece of it, but that you will attend that college if the college accepts you. Again, these deadlines are really early. You might have a better chance of being admitted because you're saying like you're committing to the school. Or sometimes students are deferred to regular admission for that if they don't get in. The other part of that is there are some restrictive components of that. Some schools allow you to not to apply to other schools. So you have to be really kind of be sure if you're committing to early decision, it is the college that you have maybe had on your list for quite some time, and that you're really invested in the program and the location. So again, not as common on the early decision side, much more common on early action. Rolling admission and regular decision are two other ones that you'll hear. Rolling decision means colleges are constantly reviewing applications, so it's a 2 to 4 week turnaround, pretty quick. Regular decision, it's basically it's all the same application as like the early action or early decision one, but you just don't have to make that early deadline. So students might be notified in the spring. College decision day is typically May 1st, so they have just a shorter window of time of committing and making that decision. So once you kind of settle on your timeline and your deadlines, the next part is, well, how do I apply? So there's 3 main application options. The common application, commonly referred to as Common App, is something that we are going to introduce your students to in class next Thursday and Friday. We'll actually create an account and walk them through some of the more challenging sections of that component. The Common App, essentially, colleges pay to be a part of this, and it streamlines the application process. So by the click, they'll fill out one application online. By the click of several buttons, they can apply to multiple schools. So they're not repeating and inputting the same information to multiple schools. The coalition application is similar, and I'll get into that more. And then the other school application is just directly through that college's website. So I kind of jumped ahead. But over 900 colleges accept the Common App. You'll find that you can see right on the college's website when they talk about their deadlines and their application process, they'll say like Common App school, or they'll say apply Common App. You'll pay directly through that website because of course they want your money, and they have great tools to kind of help you through that process. The coalition is what I was talking about is another alternative to the Common App. A smaller number of institutions use this coalition. I'll be honest, not a ton of coalition applications come through our office each year. It's just not as common as the Common App, but another kind of universal application. And then again, individual school applications, so you rarely find anything that's paper or pencil these days, but a school could have their specific own application. Sometimes you'll find that like the college will waive the application fee. They're like, use our priority application. And in some cases, it's actually a not as detailed application. And so that's really the only time I see students applying directly on their the school's website. Otherwise, if you've done the Common App once, you've essentially done it several times for all the colleges. So we talked a little bit in the beginning about, you'll see that senior transcript that will come home in that folder next week. This is what our transcripts look like. Sample transcript, you can see summary of all the final grades for each year, freshman, sophomore, junior year. In the top right corner will be listed your current classes, and then it goes down by graduation requirement, and then down to their 2 GPAs. We report 2 GPAs. So common question, do we report class rank? No. Colleges have moved away from that, so have we. 2 GPAs, a weighted GPA and an unweighted. The weighted GPA takes into account any level of class. So A, B, honors, AP, at a level, at a multiplier. The cumulative GPA takes into account any class that is ever, that a student has ever taken on their transcript. So they can see essentially how well students are doing in more challenging, harder classes versus how they're doing overall. I will add that for the last 3 years, it has been a final grade that goes on their transcript for freshman, sophomore, and junior year. Senior year is slightly different. Colleges want to keep a little bit closer tabs on the students, making sure that senioritis isn't kicking in too early. And so when transcripts get sent out to colleges, they will see their quarter 1 grades on them, okay? So it's important for your students to be, trying their best as best they can this first quarter. Then they will see, they'll check in again. They'll say, we want to see the mid-year report. So they're going to see their semester grades. And then finally, whatever college they attend, they want to see their final grades. They want to see that what they applied, when they applied, that they followed through with what they were planning and, passed their classes and did well. I talked earlier when there was that continuum about the application process, the components. One of that component was I talked about school profile. It's nothing that your student has to do on their end. It will go automatically in their application when we send our documents, and Mrs. Mays will get into that more. But this is our high school profile. It is available on our website. Essentially, it's a snapshot for the college admissions to say, what makes up our school? What kind of classes do we offer? What is our school, our community? What do we need for graduation requirements? What kind of classes are offered? And then data such as, SAT, ACT scores. So just general information for them to compare, school to school. I'm going to hand it over to Mrs. Mays, who's going to talk. I talked about kind of a general overview. She's going to dive into the Eastline High School specific process.
Hey, good evening. I'm Mrs. Mays, and here we go with the nuts and bolts of the college application process. How are we doing first half? We doing okay, parents and students? I'm happy. You guys don't look too glazed over. Just as an FYI though, we get to do this presentation next Thursday and Friday, as Ms. Kike said, for your students for 90 minutes. And I can only hope we hold their attention as well as we're holding yours. But I will tell you, we will not. 90 minutes, guys. We have 16 classes in 2 days. So if you ever wanted to send a little love to your school counselors, next Thursday and Friday might be the time to do it. All right, so the senior college checklist. This is what we're going to distribute to the kids. We're going to walk through this in its entirety with them in the classroom in those 90 minutes. We're going to explain what their responsibilities are and what our responsibilities are and what yours are as parents. So when it comes to what they should be doing now, or may have already been doing, because we went through this with them in the junior classrooms in the individual meetings. They have been completing their resumes. They've been updating their lists of activities, and that's not only for us to write letters of recommendation, but that's because on the common application, they will ask for what the students have been participating in outside of academics. The kids have also been, and I will tell you they've been diligent, requesting letters of recommendation. So a guideline is that the students should provide at least 2 weeks' notice to their teachers or counselors if they would like a letter of recommendation. Typically, most colleges would like to see 2. Sometimes it will be 2 core teachers. Sometimes it will be 2 plus a school counselor. We do make sure, please, and follow up with us at home, that if they need a school counselor, they look and see that before they come and request for us. We do not automatically write for every student, which is what the students are usually under the misconception that the counselors just write for them. We do not unless they request. So right now, like I said, they are completing their resumes. They're asking their teachers for letters of recommendation. There is a teacher recommendation form that is available to them that the teachers will often ask for. We can provide it in the counseling office. We also have it on the Google Classrooms. It's available online. Kids fill that out, give it to their teachers, so the teachers have a little more information with which to write their letters. If they would like a letter from the counselors, I think it's on the next screen, but they're going to complete also the counselor questionnaire, which can be found on Naviance, along with their resume. And what they can find also in the Google Classroom, we've created a little college application process, how to request letters of recommendation. We do tell all the students to please approach teachers and counselors in person. Please do not just send an email to us. Please come see us in person. Let us know where you're at with the process. Let us know what schools you're interested in looking at, etc. And then we give a little bit of tips for after you've requested a letter of recommendation, it's been completed on your behalf, what you should do to follow up. And there it is. That's the slide I was looking for. So if they're going to request a letter from their counselor, they are going to make an appointment with us. Like I said, just for 10 minutes, so we can go over where they're at. But then they're going to fill out this Google form for us. They can find this Google form in the stream, in the Google Classroom. In the classroom. Student responsibilities apply. So that's where they're at right now. Now after we meet with them this week, they're probably going to move forward because as Ms. Case mentioned, we have some November 1st and November 15th deadlines coming up, some October 15th deadlines coming up. So we're going to move straight into applying. So it is the student's responsibility to apply to their college or university. We will start the common application with them in the classroom. We will not complete it with them. So it is your responsibility with them to make sure they're completing that at home. It is their responsibility to pay and submit their application when it is completed. It is their responsibility to send their official standardized test scores. So if they're looking to send those SAT or ACT scores, they need to log in to their College Board or ACT student account and send them. There is a fee associated with that. I haven't looked at the cost for this year yet. Have any parents sent any score reports yet? How much was it?
I don't remember. It was expensive.
I wonder.
I'll say that. And the second thing I'll say is we had to follow up several times because they were not sent the time we had.
Good points that you're making. So if a school is requesting them, they're required. Please know that at least 2 weeks leeway time, maybe 3 weeks, to get those official score reports in. We as a school do not send those score reports. They are not in the transcript. We do not send unofficial reports. So if the college is looking for those SATs or ACTs, they must be sent directly from these organizations. Additionally, we're going to walk through what's called a FERPA statement with your students, which allows the high school to release information to the colleges, and that information is going to be their letters of recommendation, and it's going to be their transcript and academic profiles, and we do that by matching their accounts to Naviance and Common App in the classroom with them. Requesting transcripts. So we're going to, again, walk through this with your students, but they will need to request their transcripts on Naviance, and in addition to requesting them on Naviance, they are going to send an email to ccc@elpsk12.org in order to get the transcripts sent. And when we keep referring to transcripts, and I've said this a little bit, it's a little redundant, but we're also sending with that the school profile, the letters of recommendation, the current report card grades if we have them, which we will not have until first quarter is over, and the transcript, that document that Mrs. Kike showed you. And then she also mentioned the mid-year grades, and that's what we will send after we get those mid-year grades in about February. So in order to request transcripts, we also need a little lead time. So to do that, if a student has a November 1st deadline, we are asking that they please request those transcripts both on Naviance and by email by October 27th. And that's so that we have a couple of days to process them. And I will tell you, we usually have 100 applications or more for that November 1st day. I think we had 160 last year by November 1st. Does that sound about right? So we really do need that lead time. If a kid comes to us the day before, I cannot guarantee it will go out time.
I have a question about, so the follow-ups, the midterms and the final grades.
Yep.
Once you've submitted the request for the initial, is it in the queue for those things to be sent out automatically, or do you need to
So the mid-year grades will go out automatically to all of the schools the students have applied to. The final transcript will only go out to the school that the student is attending, because by that point we will know. We go through a survey and we find out. Okay. Just a couple follow-up things. Because it is something that teachers and counselors do outside of their day to do these letters of recommendation, it is nice, and we really do appreciate a thank you note. I tell the kids, just stop by and tell me that you got all your stuff in and follow up with me so I know what's going on. Financial aid, we're going to get into that in a minute, but you are able to start filling out your FAFSA beginning October 1st, and the CSS profile, which is another financial aid document that's required by some private institutions, will be open as well. Scholarships, I think I get into this a little bit on another slide, but we have links posted on Naviance. We also are continually, and when I say continuously, we are posting probably 5 a day in our Google Classroom. So students need to be checking that class of 2022 school counseling Google Classroom. These are just some general tips for completing the application. We'll go through this with your kids. They're pretty important, just so that the student comes off looking their best in their applications. Make sure they read all of the directions. Obtain an appropriate personal email address. Hopefully by now, we've talked to them about that since starting in 9th grade, and I'm sure you have at home, but it really shouldn't be like buddysoccer22@gmail, apply. It should be the student's name, something professional, someone we're putting in our applications. Consistency as well. No nicknames, stick to the facts. When I write a letter of recommendation, for instance, I always use the student's full name. They should do so as well when they're sending in their application. Be precise. If they're asking for some information, make sure it's filled out and complete. A lot of students don't know their social security numbers, so just make sure that they're figuring out what needs to go on that application. Be succinct, be thorough. The common application allows up to 10 activities, so we want to make sure if those students are listing 10 extracurricular activities or 10 honors and awards, those are maybe the student's most important or meaningful activities and awards. So if a student has participated in both National Honor Society and Ping Pong Club, and we're making it down to the end of the list of 10, we're obviously going to recommend National Honor Society goes on there and not Ping Pong Club. And then make sure they keep a copy of everything and save their email correspondence. So this is another one of the forms that you're going to see in your folder. This is the common application guidelines that we walk them through in the classroom. We basically just provide a cheat sheet for them. So we will walk through, like I said, we'll go through this with them to start filling it out in the classroom. This will give them information about what our ECE and CCP courses are, what their transcript, how we designate levels on their transcript, how many kids are in their class, information that they're going to need and they don't always have at the ready. So we've provided that for them. And if we don't finish the Common App in class, at least the demographic part, they bring this home and work on it at home. This is just a continuation of that. So the essay. The essay to me, and this is what I say to my kids, is really the place where the student gets to shine. It's the only place where a college admissions officer gets to read in the student's from the point of view of the student and learn who the student is in character, in personality, in writing style, etc. Everything else is so concrete and black and white that the essay really is important because that's how an admissions counselor gets to know your student. And a lot of what an admissions counselor says, what matters to them is if the student's going to be a good fit on the campus. So this is the best way for them to figure that out. So the essay really is important. I can't tell you how much it weighs at one school versus another. At a school like UConn, it's not quite as imperative because they're scrolling through 35,000 applications and they are looking at numbers, very data-driven. Then you look at a smaller school and they're looking for that right fit of the student on the campus. So essay is hugely important. What's so great about Eastline High School is that the English department will work on the essays in every single English 12 class, doesn't matter the level. So every student is going to be working with a teacher and their peers to complete this essay. The essay topics are already available. You can go on to commonapp.org. You can start looking at them. We will provide them in their folder next week as well. So they can start brainstorming their topics. They can come talk to their counselors about content. They should talk to their English teachers about proofreading and editing, but they're welcome to come to us to talk about content. So, that was all my opinion. The slide says, also, make sure they answer the question, write more about just the facts, be creative, honest, watch your language, definitely, and proofread, spell check, and proofread. There's nothing worse, guys, than some major spelling errors or proofreading errors in a college essay. So if you have a student who's willing to sit down with you and do it, I would recommend it. If not, just make sure they're checking with their English teacher or their counselor.
What's the timeline in the English class for the teacher working on the essay?
So it varies. Most of them will be working on it in October. Some started a little earlier, some started a little later. There's a push for them all to have it done by November 1st, but I will say that that's not always the case. So sometimes the end of the tail end before November 1st, some kids are finishing on their own. But they will all at least be starting it. Next steps. The cost. So, I will tell you that your school counselors this is not our forte. Obviously, we're familiar with financial aid because we deal with this every year. However, what we do on our behalf, mostly for ourselves, is we host a financial aid night with a professional who will come and fill you in and talk to you about all needs financial. She will also walk you through the FAFSA. What we do in our office is we host and promote a number of scholarships. So we are constantly looking for scholarships for your students. We are getting dozens of emails a day, and we are posting all of those in our Google Classroom. We are also connecting the kids if there's something very specific that comes across our desk, and we have a student who's eligible for that. We will call them in and speak to them directly. So we are trying to make it as much as we can. We are trying to promote these to your kids. In addition, your students should be looking on Naviance under the scholarship list. That's also updated frequently. There's also a scholarship search. And in addition to that, your students should be using national search engines that are free of charge, not where they need to pay, and creating accounts and starting to look through national lists of scholarships for themselves. So that's kind of a full-time job. So after they make their way through the application process, they're going to substitute that hour or two they were spending on the application process to start spending it on scholarship searching. Next. Some helpful websites. The FAFSA Forecaster. It does estimate financial aid for the family and what the family contribution is going to be. So if you'd like to check that out, it's a good idea. You're going to create an ID, go on there and do an estimate for next year. StudentAid.gov, FAFSA assistance in helping to fill out the FAFSA. College Scorecard is another college search, and CES is another college search. At this point too, if your students are still searching, as this is the case, spoke about at the beginning, they're looking for those two great fit, those two match schools, those two safety schools, they should still be using Naviance and College Board. Those are two of the main resources that we utilize with them and that they're familiar with.
So for private scholarships that are available, not associated directly with the college, but is the financial aid form usually required for those?
The FAFSA absolutely could be required. It's not always required. It could be required. You're going to want to look directly through the scholarships that you're looking at and your individual institutions. That is another good point though. Thank you for bringing up the individual institutions. Your students should also be looking for scholarships that are available directly from the colleges they're applying to. There could be merit-based money that is available. There could be money based on demographic criteria, etc. So your students really should be looking at each of those as well.
I have a quick question.
Oh, sure.
My understanding is the students also have to create their own FAFSA ID. What's that for that if the parents are doing it?
No, the students are creating the FAFSA ID, and the parents are using their prior tax return to fill it out.
Oh, so it's under their ID?
Correct.
We don't have to create our own for theirs?
No,
You can create your
You-
own and be able to save it as like, there's a mechanism so that you can do a lot of the filling out and then save, like you put in a password so that either your student can do it or you can do it. And like there's tags. I made sure I knew what that ID was, even though they tell you not to. But, you know.
I'm going to recommend everybody comes to our financial aid night, and she'll walk you through it.
Yeah. It's weird.
All right, here it is. Financial aid night, October 28th, 6:30 in the Eastline High School auditorium. We have a representative from Connecticut College Financial Aid Office, Patricia Buno, who comes and will, again, walk you through the FAFSA and all changes. So even if you've done the FAFSA in the past, you'll get to see everything that's new for this year. College fairs. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we are, again, not offering the college fair this year. So not in person at least. So an opportunity for your students, if they're still exploring colleges, would be to utilize a virtual NACAP college fair. So they will need to register for it. You can visit the registration page through their website and see how many colleges and universities are going to be participating. I hear it is quite a good experience from students who've attended in the past. You can get a lot of information. You sit in on some Zoom sessions, etc. And there will be more sessions even available regarding financial aid. It's not just college-based conversations. It can be also about transition and financial aid. How to make a counselor appointment. So your students are all pretty familiar with this at this point. I think we've built a nice rapport with them. Hopefully they feel comfortable coming to see us to go through this whole process. But currently we are still trying to take appointments virtually if the student would like to. Not virtually, I'm sorry, electronically. So the students can do this by visiting our webpage and making a counselor appointment. We each also have a signature on our email. So if a student emails us, right at the bottom of each of our emails, we have a how to schedule a 15-minute appointment, how to schedule a 30-minute appointment, and we are going to have the kids follow up with individual appointments after we do our classroom presentations next week. They also can stop in the counseling office, A200. Mrs. Astley, who sits there, is more than happy to make appointments for all the students. So also coming up on October 13th, we are testing grades 9 through 11 on the PSAT, which your seniors no longer have to take. So we are offering the ASVAB test, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, during that time, because the students are free, the seniors are free. So if they're interested in taking that vocational assessment, they can come sign up at A200. We're also offering one of our first field trips since 2020, a trip to Three Rivers Community College for a senior day, they're calling it. And it's going to be pretty much a full day, or at least a few hour-long event that the students will get to see the college campus, tour some classes, get some information about Three Rivers, and have lunch. And then it looks like we just had a little reminder there about requesting our transcripts. I think we can't beat that into their heads enough, right? So a lot of this information, I recognize, is redundant, but we feel it's really important to continue to repeat it to both parents and students because it's a very stressful time for you, which we recognize, and we know that there's a lot of details in this process, so we know that, you know, hearing it over and over hopefully will help it sink in. So at this point, I think we're finished with our presentation. We're gonna stop the recording.